Why is having AI policies and procedures in place so important? And why have so few done it? And how should HR leaders approach AI transformation over the next 18 to 36 months? And did ChatGPT really help David DeWolf write Knownwell's very first OKRs in under an hour? Spoiler alert, yes. Yes, it did. Hi, I'm Courtney Baker, and this is AI Knowhow from Knownwell, helping you reimagine your business in the AI era. For the second part of this special two-part episode, Knownwell's Chief Strategy Officer, Pete Buer, joins CEO David DeWolf to discuss his research into AI transformation and why it's important for middle market professional service companies. We'll also have a discussion with Tamarah Usher of Slalom about how they're enabling enterprise AI transformation. But first, let's pick up where we left off last week. Here is the second part of the conversation between David DeWolf and Pete Buer.
What is the proper place then for HR in what really sounds like a mess, right? What you just laid out is people are moving because they have to move. So they're doing the basics of knowledge and strategy, and they're getting in the room and they're talking about it, educating themselves and coming up with, plans. But there feels like in everything you just described, a big void in terms of playing it out and actual implementation. So how should senior HR leaders, how should senior executives be thinking about what should I be actually doing?
So I would start with the CEO and the chief transformation officer, or whatever the corollary might be, and counsel those people to pull HR into the conversation if HR is not currently, like, HR needs to be, to our earlier conversation, that HR needs to be in from the beginning, not only to help influence the human, the slash talent angle on all the questions, and it is fundamental to all the questions, but also to know what's coming. They need to understand the work ahead, rather than 5 steps later in the process downstream get handed something and be expected to pull off some kind of magic.
Right.
Then I think the job for HR is one of assessment of my own capabilities and the capabilities of my team and my function, and determination of where I need to up my game the fastest and in what order.
Okay.
And so there are skilling questions, there are capabilities on the team questions. And I think some of the skilling questions that get overlooked in all of this are around change management. So, the work that we're talking about, and what's beautiful about AI and how promising it is that, yes, there are centrally led initiatives that will drive major change in the business that have to be change managed. But at the same time, with generative AI, day-to-day work can change and needs to change day in and day out, unrelated to what necessarily the top-down major initiative might happen to be. And so, are individual employees able to look at their workflow and ask themselves where I could be more efficient? Do they understand the fundamentals of AI and large language models and generative and how it all factors in? Do managers have either the motivation or the capability to guide their teams to look together at opportunities in their work? All of this can and should be happening, within the safe boundaries of proper experimentation within the business. But that's the way change is going to happen. It's not just a big central mandate. It's the entire transition of staff to a new way of thinking about examining and optimizing the way they do work. All of which suggests a very different agenda for how HR approaches its job day in and day out.
No doubt. I couldn't help but laugh as you're saying that. I'm sitting and looking over your shoulder, and it says, "Dad knows best, but nobody listens." It feels so appropriate for what we're talking about, right? HR knows best, but nobody listens. We got to change that dynamic.
Yes and no. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that Dad doesn't know best about, right? Dad thinks he knows best. And HR has an acumen and experience gap here. Yep. And in order to be able to lead effectively, to problem spot, to pattern spot and problem solve there's a learning journey that HR needs to go on to get to a place where they can actually show up, at the pace and knowledge level that the business and change requires.
Have you seen any HR leaders that are doing this exceptionally well? And what are the patterns that you've identified in those that are, in terms of how they're approaching exactly that problem of not just getting the organization ready, but themselves ready?
Absolutely. And this is a question that we've asked many leaders on the podcast, not just about HR, but, what is your advice for leaders generally in getting up to speed? And it's all about rolling up your sleeves and getting to work, right? It's, sign yourself up for whichever of the generative AI applications most makes sense for the work that you do, and get cracking. There's a wonderful article that we profiled in one of the podcasts. I think it came from Wall Street Journal about the author had committed themselves for the course of a week to start every single project with AI. Whether it was a project at work or it was, figuring out what food to pull from the refrigerator to make dinner tonight, or pulling together a college visitation road trip, which by the way is one that I just did. And, at the end of just 1 week of total immersion, this author was able to, play back just how far that they had come along. I've since recommended that practice to a couple of my business leader friends who have run it with their teams. And the same thing happens. Like, it's not overnight because it takes a week's worth of work, but pulling up and seeing how we're doing and what are we learning and what are the shortcomings and how do you prompt better, all of that accelerates learning tenfold. Yeah. So I think it's about your personal commitment to readying yourself to a different kind of future and investing your nights and weekends, in the right kinds of skilling experiences. And you can get some of it online through major institutions, and that's great too. But it strikes me that there's not much better than learning in the course of doing actual work for a business that you actually work for. So that's a lot of what I see people doing. We've been called in to a couple of companies to do an education session. So for a health services provider, we kind of did a rundown on where AI is hitting in health services and the categories of implementation and what the implications are for employees, and therefore, what HR needs to be thinking about. And so getting some outside help is useful too. The thing that's tough about this question and this particular development challenge that we're talking about is that for all leaders, HR included, to drive change and performance outputs using AI, you kind of need three rare capabilities in your skill set. Like you got to know enough about AI, right? In the first place, you need to appreciate transformation. So strategy, pivots, reworks, reorgs, right? Because all of that is the way that the technology at the end of the day ends up enabling change. And you need to understand talent and talent flows and what drives people and how to drive change. And that set of stuff doesn't show up in a lot of people at the same time. So I think also one of the jobs of HR is going to be, starting with leadership, to assess the competency model and ask ourselves, are we hiring and promoting and rewarding the right sets of capabilities in addition to outcomes?
Well, there's one person I know that sits at the intersection of those three things, happens to be a master of them. I'm fortunate enough to be talking to him. So I guess one thing HR leaders can do is give you a call. But it's funny, as you were walking through that, I was just thinking, one of the other challenges that I think is very real right now is that this technology continues to move at such a pace that staying on top of it is really hard. I had an experience just about a week and a half ago. For those that are unaware, OpenAI just released O1 Preview, which is kind of the next generation of not generation. It's still based on the OpenAI ChatGPT 4 framework, but it is a deep thinking model as opposed to just the traditional model. And what does that mean? It means that it actually spends time processing and planning and thinking before it goes off and executes. And it was published, and I really wanted to make sure that I understood what that meant, because it feels so hard to get your hands around. Like, what does that actually mean? And so I decided to do what you were just talking about. I decided to take my real work and see if I could use it to do some thinking work for me. And one of the things we're doing at Knownwell right now is in the third quarter, we really started to roll out the first version of our management system and building some discipline and the rudimentary kind of basics of the business, and rolling out OKRs and having an objective setting framework was a big part of that. And we did some experimentation with that and that different things. And in Q4, we're taking what the leadership team did and rolling it out to the rest of the organization. And so one of my OKRs was around OKRs, which was one of my key results was making sure that we trained the organization on setting good OKRs. And I needed to come up with a curriculum for educating on OKRs for a startup where we don't have people sitting around that can be putting classes on. And, we weren't going to take a day and a half of people's time to run them through a class and different things. It literally took me 4 prompts in ChatGPT. I was blown away. The first prompt, the reason I couldn't use it and I had to refine it was because it literally gave me like a 6-week course, and it sat there and it thought, and it was the most robust curriculum. And I was like, oh my gosh, I would have to hire a professor at a university to teach this. That's how good it was, right? And 4 prompts, I was able to get it down to a 1-page syllabus that leveraged online resources that was basically read this book, watch this video, et cetera, but what rationalized around our OKR system that we were rolling out. And it was unbelievable. And I felt like I learned something just by using it, that an experience. And guess what? It took something that I thought was going to take me a significant amount of time, and it turned it into literally 4 prompts. It was probably 15 minutes. And I thought, oh my gosh, I've got something that I can work with here. Yep. I think those are the types of aha moments we are still having. If I had done that 3 months ago, it would have taken me more time to wrangle what I needed.
There's an emerging reality around selection of your generative AI tool in any way that aligns exactly with what you're saying. We spoke to a number of HR heads, and they were impressed by how quickly things are changing and how one tool all of a sudden does a thing that the other tool didn't do.
Yep.
And the consensus of the group was it's actually smarter to place your very best bet on what seems like the very best tool and ride with it. Same thing with the tech stack where the AI applications are coming out. Ride with your vendors for a time before making any big decisions, so that you can have an appreciation for how much changes on what timeline, and to what end. They were even talking about the need for service providers to show up and do their work and then be available with the bat phone 6 months out, 18 months out, because by that point I might need something fundamentally different, and I don't want to start over with someone else. They're going to want to be in touch with you. So there's something interesting about the early days of a technology that's moving quickly that has implications for all of us who are selling something into companies, and the way we wrap our offerings with service and a tail of staying in touch.
So, Pete, let's step back from all this. Let's digest everything you're talking about, all this research. If you were to boil it down to takeaways, you talked about executive leaders and how they should be thinking. Like, number 1 recommendation was pull your talent organization into this. Go get your HR leader and make them part of the conversation. Let's turn it around for HR leaders. There's the component of getting themselves ready, educating themselves. What are the next 2 or 3 things that they should be doing right now in order to prepare to take this leadership role? And how should they be kind of interrogating the pain points that they're going to see in their organization and processing them and thinking about kind of what their next steps are?
Well, I'm tempted to go back to the frame of the categories of jobs to be done, at least as the starting point for us. There's the work that HR needs to do for the rest of the organization. And job one is to be plugged in on where strategy is going and what the implications of AI are for the business at the highest level, and in the context of business outcomes. So if you're not infinitely deep on the company plan, and if you don't know as much as anyone else on the leadership team currently knows about the role of AI and where it fits into priorities, that needs to be job one. Second, there's looking across the organization for the places where, from day one, back to that image of employee number 332 firing up ChatGPT, right? To understand the places where there is risk or opportunity that you as a leader of change can address immediately. So, is there a protocol in place for, how to think about the use of AI? Is there an accepted set of tools, and are there tools that people shouldn't be using? And is the entirety of the organization clear on all that? The policies and the protocols and the wrapper on all of this ends up being super important. It's the vanilla. It's not it's not the moose tracks of work, but it's freaking important, and it's what keeps you out of jail. There's also then understanding the implications on skills and work and behavior, which is really tricky business because you've got the overall role of generative AI in, day out work, and then you've got initiative-led stuff. And so that will be the work of the next 18 to 36 months.
Interesting.
And it has to be broken down into its component parts. And as the head of HR, you need not only to understand the implications driven by these particular initiatives and investments, you also need to be able to roll it up to what the implications are for workforce planning. And what roles are you gonna just need more of later, and what roles are you gonna need less of? And how about, like, will people need to be skilled into new jobs because the skills that they currently have and their current ones aren't going to endure? Like, there's a lifetime, there's a career's worth of work, I believe, to be done in a meaningful size organization in that space.
Wow.
Then there's the other half of the equation, which is looking at HR and asking yourself, how are you going to lead transformation in your function to contribute to the financial objectives of the business? The process you described, David, of setting up a curriculum on OKR development and launch is what's happening in learning and development right now, right? Like, hard to imagine a function that's better enabled or made more efficient in the entirety of the business than L&D when it comes to the role of generative AI, right? And so if I've got 35 people on my L&D team, can I make that 5? Or is there some set of activities that the team could be doing where I would redeploy the 30 to higher level activity, keep the 5? Right? Like, that's important thinking function by function that has to happen within. There's the skilling of yourself and your team that we've talked about, just to be ready for the world to come. And then there's a category of HR innovation that's kind of the step beyond being more efficient and augmenting your folks. There's really interesting work being done at the edges around building skill-based organizations. It used to be limited by the difficulty of scaling that kind of work, but AI and HR powers it now. And so you actually could be running a fundamentally different business based on skills rather than roles, how the whole thing goes, and managing talent through your system differently. You could be managing the experience of your people day in and day out in a way that's completely different than, forgive me for saying so, the clunky onboarding and, performance management and the employee life cycle that we're accustomed to. Like, we now have capabilities at our fingertips to, with some effort and some creative thinking, fashion a fundamentally different experience for our people.
Wow. Yeah, those are fun things to think about. I want to go back just for a second. You painted a clear picture. Job number 1 is educate yourself. Job number 2 is plug into the organizational strategy around AI. Make sure you know as much as everybody else. Job number 3 is look at those just real practical, tactical risks and opportunities that from day one, nobody else is looking at, but you need to be able to enable and mitigate those risks, right? And then you get into the big stuff of understanding the implementation, how you roll this out, and the skills and the behaviors of the organization. So organizationally, you're looking there. At the same time, it sounds like you're looking at your own organization and HR and saying, if the business isn't doing this, I need to lead by example and start looking at the functions of my business. And that spans all the way from tactical to the much more strategic of reinventing HR in and of itself. So it really sounds like there's 3 big jobs for the CHRO. It is educate and upgrade yourself, educate and upgrade your organization, educate and upgrade your function, your department. Wow. I mean, talk about the new age of the CHRO and having a seat at the table. This is big stuff. I remember when we first came up with the concept, we had the podcast about how the CHRO is the new CMO, right? And this is the new dawn. I mean, it sounds to me like you really have dug into the research, and we've discovered that that's not just a hypothesis. That's very, very true.
It is very, very true. And the way it plays out for a lot of HR and talent leaders is this is going to be a career defining moment. 3 years from now, 18 months from now, as we look back on what companies made progress and what companies didn't, the ones who didn't are the ones who didn't get people to behave differently, didn't get people on board for the work, didn't get the organization to the right level of skill. And so HR is going to be feeling like I didn't have the support of the organization to do that, or my team wasn't ready, but I feel like I didn't get the job done.
Yep.
And I don't want HR leaders to be in that place at any stage of their career, but certainly not right now when so much is at stake. And so that for me is the personal motivation in all of this for doing whatever it takes to get those 3 or 6 or whatever jobs to be done, done as soon as you possibly can.
Wow. Okay, so let's close this way. You gave us a little tease, a little preview at the beginning that you have launched Nordlight. Nordlight is actually in business to do exactly this, and to help organizations, both the leadership and especially the CHRO, to be ready. Tell us a little bit more about Nordlight. How can people find out more, and what kind of services are you providing to your clients right now?
First of all, the website gets unwrapped probably by the time of this podcast launch. So thenordlight.com. It's got a the in front of Nordlight.
Very modern and intelligence era of you.
Well, and the imagery, as I'm sure is obvious, finding beautiful light in the darkness, to help point a way forward is kind of where we were coming from with the concept. The personas that we're meaning to serve are the ones that we've talked about. So there's board and investor set, making sure your businesses are focused on the right risks and opportunities. There's CEO / whatever combination of team members are actually putting together the plan and making sure that we are building out the roadmap for change in a way that is most compelling for the business, prioritizing it properly, and bringing the leadership team and the broader organization along effectively. And then lastly, is the talent piece for heads of HR, all the things that you and I have been talking about. But at the end of the day, making sure we're achieving financial and organizational outcomes by changing the way people work and getting them to new skills and behaviors. So those are the organizations served. And at the moment, it's a services offering. And so we do call them consulting sprints, advisory sprints, 4, 8, or 12 weeks, depending on the size of the ambition of the work. But the spirit being get a lot done fast and give a company the kind of direction it needs to get in gear and get going. This isn't the time to be spending a lot of cycles on the work. It's got to be right. It's got to be done fast. And ultimately, we'll be working to build out communities as well. So in addition to, the service offering, having a place to go where like-minded leaders similar to yourself can exchange best practice and talk through their problems and get great content in the areas that they're most focused on will be sort of phase 2 of the work.
Fascinating, Pete. Oh, congratulations, thenordlight.com. I'm super excited. I know this has been a labor of love as you dove into a very early germinated hypothesis that really led you to a really fascinating point. I'm so excited about what the Nordlight is doing and what you're going to be helping so many enterprises do, which is really adopt AI the right way and worry about the people. I know that's at the core of your heart is you love the research, you love the data, you love change management, all these things, but at your core, you love people and making sure that AI lands in the enterprise in a way that elevates that human experience. I know is core to who you are. And I have no doubt that as you lead the way, that's exactly what the organizations who are working with you will experience is tremendous transformation, but also incredible elevation of that culture you said so many are worried about.
Couldn't have said it better myself, David. Thank you.
You're welcome. Great and fascinating information. As always, Pete, so fun to swap chairs with you, and thanks for all your insights.
Yes, sir. Let's do it again.
The new era of commercial intelligence, it's here. And if you're interested in having real-time, objective intelligence on the health of your commercial relationships, you might be interested in trying out Knownwell. Go to knownwell.com/demo for a guided tour and to set up time to speak with our Knownwell team. Tamarah Usher is the Senior Director of AI Innovation at Slalom, a $2 billion plus company with more than 12,000 team members spread out across 45 locations. She recently chatted with Pete Buer about enterprise AI adoption and transformation.
Tamarah, hi. So great to have you on the program.
Yeah, happy to be here.
I have to start by saying I love your title, Senior Director of AI Innovation at Slalom. Could you give us a little bit of background on Slalom for context and then tell us what the Senior Director of AI Innovation does?
Absolutely. Yeah. So Slalom is a consulting firm. We like to talk about ourselves as the smallest of the big and the biggest of the small. So we're focused on all things strategy, transformation, and technology. So a mix of business and technology consulting. So of course, AI innovation, especially these days, incredibly important as more of the organization takes on all the things that AI can do and has to offer for accelerating work. That's really where innovation comes in and takes a play. So, some of that is strategy. What's the right things to invest in? And some of that is pure innovation. Let's test and learn and make sure that the things work the way we expect them to, and we're able to scale appropriately.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I understand that you are part of the steering committee responsible for directing Slalom's efforts to adopt AI. Can you talk about some of the more promising initiatives internally?
Yeah, of course. And it's great because, this position of the AI office that we've employed at Slalom is important for us to stay ahead of the curve, right? To modernize our own business so that we can best advise our clients on how to integrate AI into their business. So it's very circular, outside in and inside out. So some of the things that we're doing first and foremost is, the access to the tooling, right? Making sure that that's safe and secure, that we're protecting our data, our clients' data, that all of our, Slalomers understand how to use the technology in a safe way. And then we go off on the big, sort of runways of skilling. And that really then is a lot of what we're focused on, is making sure that across our workforce, everybody has the skills and abilities to not just integrate AI into their work that they're doing, but also to reimagine our work, to reimagine and transform the way we bring services and products and acceleration to our clients. But also, while we're doing that, we're building as we go. So also building some of these great things that become accelerators and products that we can offer to our clients. So, yeah.
I was speaking to a friend recently who runs the innovation lab at World 50. And he said, as he was working with I think it was a procurement group to sort of reimagine, reinvent workflows, that the customers are running into the problem of a skills deficit on the team. They don't know how to think about workflows or creatively reassemble them, with AI, by the way, which they also don't understand. How big of a problem is that going to be for business?
I think that is the largest problem, especially right at this moment. I think, a lot of the attention that's shifted from, play and experiment last year to like ROI and expectations this year is really trying to put pressure on that very problem. But I think what's interesting about that, and we're starting to see, even as CEOs talk to the street and start to talk about the skills deficit and recognize that there's a lot that can be done about that. And I think companies and individuals too have a lot of opportunity to, now that we're starting to recognize that, really start to double down on that as an investment.
Does this change the role of HR? I'm imagining the skills challenge, that is the domain of HR, right? I don't know if HR is ready, but it sure seems like there's a big job ahead.
It certainly can. I would say that what's probably happening in many, and I talk to many, CHROs and people officers, is that, they're looking to anticipate structural change. But then the learning and development opportunity is very much there as well, right? So the thing that's different this time and similar to the conversations we just had, which is that it's happening faster, right? Your shelf life of a skill is, probably really at 6 months right now. And I think that that's a level of dynamic nature to skills that HR departments really haven't led at this point. And the other thing I think to mention is the orientation around roles, or the move to a skill architecture over a role architecture is also another one to consider as we start to get a lot more dynamic as we employ skills across the organization over roles.
I'm involved in so many conversations about the move to a skills-based talent management. Is that, in your mind, AI driven, or are these two trains coming into the station at the same time?
Yeah, I think they're coming into the station at the same time. I think, we've been on a clip of that exponential curve, where that pressure on skills has just come to, a front, and that I think AI just continues to expedite that.
I guess AI as a tool to manage the skills inventory is another maybe driver, accelerator of the trend.
Yeah, I mean, especially as you look at, we're now figuring out, more direct ways that we can employ AI to augment and, even to the scale of 80 to 90% of certain workflows, which almost feels like a complete automation, that those, the skills to operate our AI workforce or to work side by side with AI agents and those kinds of things is, such a huge departure from an importance on intelligence that we as a species has put such an importance on forever, that's, intelligence, reaching, near marginal cost is, quite a different way to look at how do we employ the special characteristics that we have of context and dot connecting and strategy and creativity and things like that, that can really actually ultimately transform our industries and put that into the workforce as the main driver of human work.
You just referenced a percentage of work that can be augmented or automated. We see lots of these studies. Professional services is a area of focus for the business because our sense is that it's one of the sectors of business overall that will be most impacted, where there is most opportunity.
Yeah.
As you've been doing your experimentation and exploration and mapping slalom and working for customers, do you believe the numbers? Like, will we Can we get to the kinds of transformation impact that the studies are talking about?
I think we can. And I think that some will and some won't. There will be people that win and people that lose here. And I think, though, the thing that's probably the most important, and certainly the way, I think about it in terms of professional services, is obviously a focus on outcome, the focus on the next, right? Because I think that there's going to still be a place for the work that we want to do. And I say want to do because I think that the future work is more of the work that we want to do, more creative, more innovative. And, as one, importance on certain types of skills and certain types of abilities starts to wane, another emerges out of this. It's because it's going to happen so fast that I think that there's going to be a gap. But I think this is actually the new role of professional services, is to create those new things to advise around and to, really help people get there. Because I think there's going to be new things. My abundance mindset doesn't let me see the end of human work and collaboration and flourishing around the things that we want to do. But I think that just shifts. And I think that if we can be a part of creating that next wave, then that can be, certainly a place where we play. It's not the numbers that it has been in the past for this kind of work, but I think it still remains important work.
I wonder what's the coolest thing that you've seen? Like you referenced some healthcare applications, sure, drug discovery and so forth. But like, if you're able to talk about it, what's the coolest application you've seen so far with customers?
Yeah, well, I'm actually building something right now, and I'll give a little bit of a preview. So we are running a hackathon at Slalom right now, and it's really themed around hack your future. And so in that regard, it's quite fun because one of the things that I do in innovation, of course, is ideation. And what we're building right now is our autonomous innovation engine. Nice. That takes core concepts that are, either ideas centralized to teams or can be pulled from our insights engine called Slalom Signal that evaluates the market and industry at large to see what's happening in the world, to bring some of those concepts in and expand them into the thousands of possible ideas for innovation that you could have off of a core concept.
Wow.
Now, it doesn't stop there. Then we test those core concepts or those new innovative products, whether they be physical, digital services, with synthetic customers that are representative of your customers or typical customer segments, that then give us, sort of real synthetic feedback from customers with their opinions and attitudes and behaviors towards those concepts.
Wow. Any early results, patterns from the work that you can report in on?
We've got a methodology around it. That's the secret sauce. It's called Power 100, and it's 100 inventive principles that really lead to this expansion of one idea into thousands. And in early tests for this, it's proving out to be really quite amazing, informed ideas. Some of these ideas are ridiculous, and some of them are fantastic. And I would want to go create them as products myself. So.
Will you publish off the back end of the work, or how will word get out about the cool things that you're doing?
Yeah, no, we'll absolutely write about it, and we will also, start working with it with our customers to start to help drive some of their innovation pipelines, help rethink how they're thinking about innovation. Yeah.
Awesome. Tamarah, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to meet you and to learn from you today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, as always, for watching and listening. Don't forget to leave us a 5-star rating on your podcast player of choice. We'd really appreciate it. And at the end of every episode, we like to ask one of our AI friends to weigh in on the topic at hand. So, hey, Gemini, what's happening? This episode, we're talking about the AI transformation mandate. What do you think?
AI is changing the game for businesses. It's like having a superpowered assistant that can automate tasks, analyze data, and even make predictions. companies that don't adapt to this new reality risk getting left behind.
And now you're in the know. Thanks as always for listening. We'll see you next week with more AI applications, discussions, and experts. Hey, if you made it this far in the episode, first of all, thank you. And second, we know that AI is changing all the time, and so we've got you covered. Here is another great episode for you to watch to stay in the loop on what's happening in AI and business. And second of all, we'd love for you to subscribe. You can do that right here. I've always wanted to do that, by the way. So do that now. That would be great.